Hi, I'm James, and today we're going to talk about the news of the Leopard 1 being sent to the Ukraine. I've done videos previously on the Leopard 2 and the Challenger being sent to the Ukraine, so I thought the news that the Ukrainian government is going to get Leopard 1s might be of interest. So 3 countries have come together to agree to this, which is the Germans, the Dutch and the Danes. Now they've agreed to provide 100 plus tanks. Now there's lots of figures floating around different websites. I've seen figures of 178, 187. 178 seems to be the most common, but basically people are committed to 100. The reason for that is because the vehicles are in storage and will need refurbishing. And as anybody who's dealt with anything that's coming out of storage will know, you won't get them all working perfectly, particularly in time. Now, the variant is the Leopard 1A5, which was pretty much the last of the Leopard. Excuse me. It's very similar to the Canadian C2. In fact, the Canadian C2 basically took a Leopard 1A5 turret and put it on a Canadian C1 hull. So I've got a little bit of footage you can see there of the C2 running around at Bovington. Now training has already started apparently in Germany for this, which kind of makes me think that Germany is sort of now finally coming off the fence. Yes, we've sort of said about Germany not providing much, and my video sort of did discount that to a degree because I looked at all the other bits and pieces that the Germans had provided. But now they're actually seeming to be moving down the route of tanks. I'm guessing that Leopard 2 numbers are limited, as I've talked about in the video, by how many they've got in service themselves and serviceable. But it does indicate to me that Germany is becoming much more supportive of the Ukraine. I think it'll be interesting to see if they go down the route of fighters, which is what's being talked about today. Now, it is worth noting that there's probably going to be an easier time logistically than we think with this, because the Ukrainians are already using the Leopard, and I believe another 5 are on the way as well. The Leopard uses the Leopard 1 hull and has the twin anti-aircraft guns, so they will have presumably some people trained up as drivers. It may even be the fact that they'll have facilities to sort of expand on that. And I did think logistically that the 105mm gun might be an issue, and I know last year when Rheinmetall were looking at this, ammunition was becoming a problem. But 105mm is actually already in the Ukrainian inventory, because they have some upgraded T-55s from Romania which have been upgraded to a 105mm gun. I wasn't aware of them when I did the previous video, so that's an interesting little bit I've picked up on. Now, the downside from the Ukrainian point of view is delivery will be slow because of the restoration work that's needed. A lot of work will probably be needed with some of these. Rheinmetall have said they expected to deliver 20 to 25 this year. Yeah, that's something that hasn't made the headlines, isn't it? Everyone's going, oh, there's 100 plus tanks, and that was my first thought. But when I started digging in, Rheinmetall are saying that. The Ukrainian defence minister is a little bit more optimistic. He's saying 20 to 25 by the summer and 80 by the end of the year. It's not clear if that's an additional 80 or whether that's 80 including the initial ones. The Russians, as you can imagine, are not too impressed. Their defence minister actually released a statement saying it'd be easy prey for ATGMs. Because they don't have reactive armour. This does seem to overlook the fact that large numbers of the tanks like the Challenger and the Leopard 2 don't have explosive reactive armour or ERA, but they do have Chobham type armour or Dorchester if you want to be technical. So from that perspective there is a degree these are going to die if they're hit, and that's fairly obvious. That actually almost ties in with the policy when they were designed. In the late 50s, early 60s, as these were being developed, the German policy was to move completely away from the Second World War approach of massive behemoths, the classic Tiger, King Tiger and so on, and to go for a lighter tank. They reasoned that particularly with heat ammunition, you would never be able to keep pace with the ability of weapons to penetrate the armour. So they went for speed, and their logic is a fast tank can get out of there quickly. That was the logic. And in all fairness, against a fairly slow ATGM, that is an interesting thought. The problem is the Leopard 1 has never been tested in combat against other tanks. It was used by the Danes in the former Yugoslavia, and it did engage, I believe, an artillery battery, and definitely came out on top. And the Leopard was also used by the Canadians in Afghanistan, where obviously it was used more as a fire support vehicle. So it hasn't ever been tested, this theory, against tanks, and I've got no doubt there will be a lot of people looking at the footage and the reports once they actually do get to the Ukraine. Now, there's an interesting point to consider, which is that in the early 90s, after German reunification, the Bundeswehr actually had large numbers of T-72s, which were former East German ones. Now, these were the early models, the Ural, the and the M1. They looked at them and they compared them to the Leopard. And the reports indicate that they much preferred the Leopard 1. There were a lot of issues with the T-72 with the optics, for example. That was a major consideration. Most of the other factors were relatively the same. Crew comfort and crew efficiency was something else they picked up by having a semi-automatic loader rather than a fully automatic loader and a 4-man crew as opposed to the T-72's 3-man crew. They felt was a major plus. It's always been a Western thing that autoloaders are not especially good because you lose a crew member. Now, if you're a T-72 crewman, you've got to do a third of the work. Unless you're on the commander's tank, when you're now having to do half the work because the commander's off at briefings. With a Western tank, you've got 4 crew, you're doing a quarter of the work, a third of the work if it's a command tank. So it is going to be interesting, I think, how the Ukrainians adapt with that. They're obviously going to have to do it with the other tanks that are being supplied. The loader is probably the least skilled of the jobs, so I think it wouldn't be too difficult for them to do that. Now, another question that comes in is how would the Ukrainians actually use the tanks? Because they are dated, they're old, there's no two ways about that. And they're not going to be the best for tank v tank combat. But think of all the footage you've seen of the Ukraine. How many tank v tank battles have you seen? Not many. The tanks are being used very much the way tanks were used in wars like the Iran-Iraq war, where they're, rather than being a big armoured fist, they're actually being used as infantry support. Now, in an infantry support role, the Leopard would be fine. To be honest, anything with a big gun is fine as an infantry support vehicle. So if these were provided to the mechanised brigades that the Ukrainians want to form, as we said earlier in the earlier videos, they want to form 2 mechanised brigades. These will do fine as a support tank. The speed of them is good. They will be a very efficient choice by the look of it. So I am looking forward to seeing sort of the reports and seeing how things work. These are my guesses as to how it will go. If you've got observations, please put them in the comments. As ever, when we deal with anything like this, please don't put straight supporting sides, sort of propaganda type pieces. I will just delete those. I'm a big believer in discussing what's going off, but looking at it from the perspective of history. And this is history in the making. And please make constructive comments. I may make mistakes on this. If I'm making them, I want to know. But constructive. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please click on the like button below so that I know what people like and I know what to make more of. Alternatively, if you've enjoyed it and think you'd like to see more, please click on the subscribe button. That way you get notified by YouTube whenever I bring out a new video, and you never know, there might be something in there that you hadn't considered, because I do cover a variety of things on the channel. And finally, if you have a little bit of cash going, I now have a Patreon account. I'm always looking for patrons, because at the end of the day, let's be perfectly honest, it's a good way for me to get a little bit of money that will use to buy review items or to travel to museums and so on. I don't put a huge amount on that. At the minute, all we've got is one tier charging £1 a month, which just, as I said, helps cover my costs. See you soon.